Alrighty, guys. Happy New Year. Hope you enjoyed the holiday season. We're back after a hiatus. This is episode 46, I believe. Um, I have Corsian to my right. Corsian, how you doing? How are your holidays?
Uh, Doing pretty good. Been trying to read a lot, so that's good, but it takes a lot of time, and so does watching football, so it's a balance, but
Yep. Yeah, that's something on my resolutions list. Like, obviously, we're gonna have a lot of changes to the podcast shortly, so I think you guys will notice that as we go through the year. But reading is definitely on mine as well. I have a lot of books, really huge in the self development. So, um, like, looking forward to diving in that and really staying more informed. That's also on my list. So good to hear. So, um, welcome back, guys. It's been a while. Um, there's a lot of football that's been played. The Bears are somehow on a roll, and like within one game of like playoff consideration, they're obviously eliminated. But I am shocked and not shocked because I did not think like midway through the season they'd approach like 3 wins of my prediction for the team because they look that bad. And now like that the offense has found his rhythm and like the defense has been like elite, like stopping the run, elite for sure. And then like we actually have a pass rush now. Been really, really impressed by it. And then we're gonna talk about the situation going on in Denver, but they were on a roll like right before all that happened and beat the Chiefs. And then now like it's there's a lot to dissect. So we'll start with the good news first. Um, and like a little bit of like an intriguing question I want to get out of course, yeah, but Baltimore for the past 2 weeks has cooked the NFL's
hmm
leagues. Like dominated the 49ers, dominated the Dolphins. And by the way, that Bradley Chubb injury was like absolutely devastating. Like I don't think he should have been in the game when that happened.
hmm
And but that's the type of stuff you hate because like you know the Dolphins are gunning to go deep in the playoffs, and you know the Ravens are gunning to go deep in the playoffs, and like any injuries that happen there, it's like just horrible, especially in that situation because the game is over. But
hmm
um, what do you think about the Ravens this season? They they are clearly the most dominant team in the NFL
hmm
based on the season, based on how Lamar looks, and particularly after these 2 weeks. But do you think any teams have the potential to beat them? And if so, who?
um, Besides like the any given Sunday narrative, it's a really tricky thing to look at right here. Um, because like in like the weirdest way possible, I feel like the Browns could give them a run for their money. But like it's kind of weird to say that with like the Joe Flacco led Browns, who I mean he's been cooking anyways, so like
He's a
it's not
future Hall
really
of Famer. Don't disrespect Joe Flacco like
yeah.
that.
He's in his prime right now. He's never left. But yeah, I think the Browns are a potential team, and then I think the Bills on a good day are another team. Like the Bills, again, it's like I could see them absolutely getting cooked and destroyed by the Ravens. I don't think anyone would be surprised to see the Ravens, put up a Dolphins against the Bills. But I do think that the Bills, I guess, have more playoff experience and just experience in general as a team. I think to stay close at least against the Ravens if they do go head to head.
Yeah. Sorry, I got a call in the middle of the podcast, so apologies about that. Um, I will try to manage that. But you read my mind exactly. The Browns and the Bills are my two teams that I think will beat the Ravens. Like or at least like have the potential to.
Mm-hmm.
The Browns are built like literally the exact same way as the Ravens. We saw their head-to-head matchup, um, like back in the middle of the season when the Browns still had Deshaun Watson. But the thing is, Cleveland is still getting the quarterback play and the running back play, even though they lost Deshaun Watson and Nick Chubb. And their
Mm-hmm.
defense, like, is this close to the Ravens, if not better, on some
Hmm.
Sundays. So like that can be an absolute dogfight. And I'm saying this knowing that like when they last played, both of them scored over 30. Um, but like that's the one game where it's like Joe Flacco's running the offensive system perfectly.
Hmm.
Like the defense has been elite. Like they can go toe to toe with the Ravens, even though the Ravens have been like absolutely spectacular.
Hmm.
Like so, I think the downgrade from Lamar to Joe Flacco isn't as steep as people think
Hmm.
because Cleveland is well more well rounded in my opinion on the offensive line
Hmm.
than the Ravens.
Yeah.
Even and like the thing is like and I'm gonna hate this because I didn't start him. Like Amari Cooper is like a bona fide wide receiver one. I left him on my bench in the fantasy playoffs, and that's the reason I got eliminated. I got
Hmm.
eliminated by the exact same like deficit as had I had Cooper in. Like
Hmm.
maybe off by 10 points or something like that.
Hmm.
But that was
Yeah.
horrible. But like they have Cooper, they have Njoku, who's been coming on. Like and Kevin Stefanski can scheme up plays for the other guys, like Elijah Moore,
Hmm.
like Harrison Bryant. Like he's a really, really good play caller. He's gonna find a way to make things work.
Hmm.
Um, and when I see like all those factors into like the picture, Cleveland has a real shot. They really, really
Hmm.
do. Like going into these playoffs, like they're not a team that's like, oh, they have a backup QB, so we have a like opposing team shouldn't go overconfident playing Cleveland because it's
Hmm.
gonna be a dogfight. Dogfight.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I think the one, I guess, concern for the Browns at least is just the fact that, like, I mean, Joe Flacco, he's been doing great. You know, he's 38 years old as well, like just slinging it. But he has thrown quite a handful of interceptions in each of the games that he's played as well. And so I feel like of all teams, Ravens can most easily take advantage of, a guy with multiple turnovers and really, do big point swings on them. Uh, which can put them in a rut. But I do understand the Browns have a good defense that I'm sure they can stall out some of those turnover drives if they when most likely they happen.
You're talking about playoff Joe Flacco though, man.
Yeah.
Like from his former team. Like you should know this being a Denver fan, how
Hmm.
playoff Flacco is like, okay? Once he gets
Yeah.
going, you are not stopping him. He's better than Tom Brady. He's better than Aaron Rodgers. He's better than Peyton Manning in the playoffs, man.
Hmm.
Like that's the one wild card you're missing here.
Yeah. I guess I gotta think more about playoff Joe than you, Joe
Yeah,
Shiesty.
yeah. Hope Joe Burrow gets healthy. But with the Bills, I think for all I said about Cleveland, I think the Bills have a stronger shot. And what's
Hmm.
crazy is they might not even make the playoffs if they lose to the Dolphins on Sunday
Hmm.
night. So that's gonna be a great game to see how Buffalo does. And like if Buffalo wins, they could either be the 2 seed or they can miss the playoffs,
Yeah.
depending on the situation goes. I don't think Pittsburgh is winning. They looked better lately, and I think the Jaguars are gonna win, but I don't
Hmm.
think Pittsburgh's gonna win. I wonder who they're facing. It's gonna depend on the matchup. Who are the Steelers facing?
Oh, Steelers. They're going against Baltimore.
Yeah, they're not winning. Baltimore's not gonna want them in the playoffs.
Hmm.
So I think the Bills are saved. Like here, this is just a prediction here, but anything
Yeah.
could happen. Ravens could also like bench their starters and be like, we don't care if Steelers get in, but like
Hmm.
I don't like realistically, it's a rivalry game. They're probably not going to want to face two other teams in the AFC North in the playoffs back to back.
Hmm.
So I think the Ravens are going to put up a solid fight, not play with their
Hmm.
backups. But it's still crazy to think about the Bills like not making the playoffs versus getting the 2 seed just on one matchup with the way their season has panned out. But when I look at Joe Brady calling plays and that leading to like James Cook looking like a top 10 NFL running back and how that puts the load off of Josh Allen and then my infatuation for Dalton Kincaid, that came to fruition this season. Then you
Mhm.
see Stephon Diggs being Stephon Diggs. And what's crazy is that hasn't been the case these past few weeks. His numbers have been down,
Mhm.
but he's still a bona fide wide receiver one. I think every team will put their best on him and a double, like in certain coverages. Still got Gabe Davis for all my rattling on him. He's a great like option to
Mhm.
have as a tertiary wide receiver in this case. Dawson Knox is still like I like Dawson Knox. Um, I like Khalil Shakir, but they figured out how to run their offense, and their
Mhm.
defense has always been amazing. They've been shutting down the Cowboys and the Dolphins like on defense without some of their key players. So I am not worried about them on the defensive side of the ball either. And they got one of those quarterbacks that can make Mahomesian like throws at any given point of time. The one issue with him has been the turnovers. That's why they
Mhm.
were in the position they were, like going into November. But he's cleaned that up now in this new offense. Like he's making smarter reads. He's willing to take the check down, and that's why like James Cook has been a lot better. Like
Mhm.
Buffalo is the scariest team in the NFL right now, in my opinion.
Mhm.
And that's what's going to take down the Ravens. I I was careful to say like, oh, the Ravens are the best team in the NFL because that could easily change in the playoffs,
Mhm.
even though they just beat down the Dolphins and the 49ers.
Mhm.
They look the most dominant right now, but like I think that doesn't necessarily mean you'll be the best when it comes to the playoffs.
Mhm. Yeah. In these playoffs, though, all I hope to see is the Chiefs get walloped by whoever they go against first.
Yeah, I mean they do not like Richie Rice has come on,
Mhm.
like
Yeah,
as a
he's been
secondary
playing good.
receiver, and I was not expecting that. Like he it's not just like he's just getting hyper targeted or anything like that. That helps as receptions are up. What really impressed me in the Bengals game was that long reception down the field he had because that at that point in the game it flipped.
Mhm.
Like the Bengals were controlling that. They were up like 17-7, I think. And then to see I don't think that was a score when Richie Rice had this reception, but like when that reception happened, you could just see all the momentum come back. Like
Mhm.
suddenly like Patrick Mahomes can like be explosive down the field again because he has a key personnel member to do it. So like having that is gonna help them. But I think the Matt Nagy led offense has a lot of flaws, and it was showing itself like against the Raiders. That was just a crazy sequence when they scored back to back
Mhm.
touchdowns. So like I can't sit here and say the Chiefs are a serious team right now. And it's not because of Patrick Mahomes or Travis Kelsey or Chris Jones or the defense. It's literally like the wide receivers because the wide receivers have the most amount of drops in the NFL.
Mhm.
Like Patrick Mahomes could be as good as he wants, but like if he's targeting these guys and they're dropping the ball, like like his effectiveness is like non-existent at that point
Mhm.
because these receivers have to catch the ball.
Mhm. Yeah. So next season they'll probably be slightly better in the receiver room, but at least for the case of this year, they better get like absolutely cooked in the playoffs. I think that'd make me so happy.
The good news is I think even though the Dolphins got beat by the Chiefs, I think the Dolphins would take care of the Chiefs. The Ravens would take care
Mhm.
of the Chiefs. Heck, I think the Bills would, e-
Mhm.
even though like that game was decided by like a lateral play and like Kadarius
Mhm.
Toney being offsides before the beginning of that game.
Uh huh.
So like those are three teams right there, and I'm not gonna even be surprised if like Cleveland could beat the Chiefs.
Mhm.
Like I don't think this year is their year, but
Mhm.
sorry to break it to you, Corson. You never know.
Yeah, that is true.
All right. Going into more depressing news for Corsian. Russell Wilson and him getting benched in Denver for the foreseeable future, and then this
Mhm.
escalated quickly too. Their plan is to not have Russell Wilson on the roster going into next season. They're like willing to part ways with him, and I'll let you take the floor on this, Corsian, to explain the situation.
Mhm.
But how do how do you how do you dissect this?
Um, I think pretty early on, Sean Payton realized Russell Wilson isn't quite his guy, and so I think that happened. So I think the negotiation. I mean, because there's a lot of he said she said type uh, discourse happening in terms of like he's like Russell Wilson's agent had come out and said, "Oh, this is what the Broncos had claimed," but then again, it was just again something that from the Russell Party team was claiming that this was being said, and then the Broncos are saying, "Well, this is what we're actually doing," and I think it all boils down to Russell Wilson hasn't played. I mean, he's improved from last year definitely, but he hasn't played to his contract, which results in I think the tension that we're seeing here between the Broncos and Russell Wilson right now.
And what's shocking was like he's putting up better numbers than Patrick Mahomes right now. And like I think at one point he had like the fourth most amount of passing yards in the league. But I did want to read this report to add some context to this. So, according to Jordan Schultz, um, this news broke on let's see, the this came out in SI on the 29th,
Mm-hmm.
but on the 27th, apparently, it came out that after Wilson got demoted, there's a report that GM George Payton
Mm-hmm.
contacted his camp, um, Rock Three over there, contacted the three during the team's Week 9 bye, and they asked for Russell Wilson to renegotiate injury guarantees on his contract or be
Mm-hmm.
benched for the rest of the season. Um, and Russell Wilson confirmed this, and like this, like imagine this, like after you beat the Chiefs, and then you get this and saying, "Oh wait, congratulations on beating the Chiefs. We're not." Think about what that means, and then also, when you think about the injury guarantees, um, I think off air you told me it was like 37 million or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Broncos they wouldn't have to pay 37 million.
Mm-hmm.
Like it because like Russell Wilson's hurt, like if they're playing. So the whole reason why they're benching him is to avoid him getting hurt because if he gets hurt, they have to pay 37 million. That's what I'm trying
Mm-hmm.
to say. In the worst way possible. um, how like knowing all this, like, one, do you think he's out of Denver for sure? And then two,
I
do you think
yeah,
they're
go
gonna
ahead.
be looking for a veteran quarterback or like an NFL draft pick if you think he's gonna be?
Um, I think from a cap standpoint, I wouldn't be surprised if he's still here next season because the Broncos are still $20 over cap, or they'll be 20 million over cap. And so if they cut Russell Wilson, they'll have to renegotiate and cut a lot of current starters and current veterans on the team, which dismantles quite a lot. Whereas the next season over, I think they have like 70 million available in uh, total cap or something, and so it's a lot easier to cut him the following season just with the amount of excess cap space they do have. But regardless of that, I do think that the Broncos will be taking a quarterback in this draft, especially just how many quarterbacks there will be. And just like this, it seems like a really talented draft class right now. And so I know I've seen talk from a lot of like just reading a lot of Broncos stuff that Bo Nix could be a guy in the mix in terms of a guy to get. And I think that for the upcoming draft, if they don't get quarterback, they'll probably just do. I hope they do best player available. Hopefully that is a defensive end or pass rusher, because I still think the Broncos, that's one of the bigger weaknesses on the defense or on just in the football team in general.
Yeah, and that's even with the development of Browning and like Jonathan Cooper. I think having more pass rushers would
Mm-hmm.
definitely help. I also think they're going to get a QB from the draft,
Mm-hmm.
not for like yeah, the situation plays a role with it, but also there's so many QBs
Mm-hmm.
like that are projected to be picked top 10 based on this season. You mentioned Knicks. Obviously, there's Caleb Williams and Drake May. We've been salivating over those two
hmm
majority of episodes. Um,
hmm
but then you got Michael Penix, who put on an absolute show. We'll talk about him later. Um,
hmm
you got that going on, and you got the Heisman Trophy winner, Jaden Daniels. So there's like five right there. And
hmm
realistically, the Broncos could get a guy like that and then trade Russell Wilson to like New England, something like that, if they're looking for a veteran QB. Like, I don't think New England should do it, but like that's just I'm just throwing a hypothetical there. Like
Yeah.
how the Broncos could get out of this situation.
Yeah, I don't
Um,
think any team really would want to trade for that contract though. And so
right.
if it is, Broncos would have to take a lot of the contract plus probably give up a, some decent value in picks just to offload some of that money. Which
I guess one thing I do want to understand though, like when we're talking about this contract, to add some clarity to it. You mentioned the Broncos would be 20 million over the cap.
mhm,
Is that what if they cut Russell Wilson specifically, or
that's
is that
that's what
still
they
the
are right
case if they
now.
have him? Okay, so whether they have him on the roster, whether they cut him, there's still $20 million over the cap.
Yeah, so if they cut him, that brings him to like 50 or 60 or something, which
Over the cap?
over the cap, which
Okay,
obviously means you have to dismantle pretty much everything, like
right,
almost all veterans on the team, which
right,
it would just be a full Broncos rebuild, which I don't think Sean Payton would be looking forward to. Even if he gets his like guy in the draft, I don't think that's what the Broncos want to do right now.
right. Okay, that makes a lot more sense. I just yeah, it's a confounding situation because they have to cut key players anyway. So like, Cortland Sutton's played like really well this season. I was a year off on him. I was really high on him the year before that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like I could see a situation where they'll want to promote Marvin Mims, they'll cut Jerry Judy, and
Mm-hmm.
then they'll probably look to the draft for like some more
Mm-hmm.
receivers or something like that. But like
Yeah.
that's gonna be a hard pit. They're in a tough spot, and it's looking more and more like the Seahawks like absolutely
Mm-hmm.
fleeced the Broncos. So
Yeah.
evident. Sorry.
Yeah. Because I think in terms of like cap casualties, yeah, I think I wouldn't be surprised if Jerry Judy is moved on from. I think Tim Patrick has a decent shot of just moving on with reoccurring leg injuries. DJ Jones, their defensive tackle, I wouldn't be
They
surprised if he
might they
gets.
might keep Tim Patrick actually because I don't know like if his market value will be that strong after two leg injuries like that. So he might have no choice but to return. We'll see.
Yeah, well, the thing is, he's getting paid a decent bit of money, and that's the issue.
Okay, gotcha. I guess what I'm saying is he could re-sign for less money for the
Yeah, because
Broncos.
I still think he has a couple years left on his current contract, which
Mm-hmm.
is why I think that he could be a potential cap casualty.
Okay.
Yeah, but you also mentioned Russell Wilson having better stats than Mahomes, but you also have to look at Mahomes still has 1,000 more passing yards than Russell Wilson does, and
Yeah.
and then look at the weapons. I mean, you're acting like this is like a down year for Patrick Mahomes, and again, his receivers have had the most drops in the league, and it's pretty hard to compare there. Whereas, like Russell Wilson, again, I don't deny the fact that he's improved immensely from the previous season, but like Russell Wilson leads the league in sacks, but in terms of pass protection, the Broncos' offensive line ranks like top 10. At one
Okay.
point in the season, Russell Wilson, the Broncos' offensive line gave Russell Wilson the most or second most time to pass the football, and he was still leading the league in sacks. And I'm like, and because I've seen a bunch of slander going towards the Broncos' offensive line saying, oh, Broncos O line sucks. That's why Russell Wilson can't cook. I'm like, Broncos have had a top 5 offensive line according to PFF literally the entire course of the season. And like, the Broncos offense has still been stagnant, and Russell Wilson's being paid $50 million to like have 3,000 pass yards and like, and then and so I'm like, it's kind of disappointing there. And then like Jarrett Stidham, he came in against the Chargers, and literally his numbers looked near identical, or his production was near identical to Russell Wilson, and that is missing Cortland Sutton and Marvin Mims on the offense.
Wow.
whereas Russell Wilson's had him all season. And so Jerry Jeudy, Lil Jordan Humphrey, and like Brandon Johnson were like the top receivers for Jarrett Stidham uh, against the Chargers, and
No disrespect.
numbers look about the same.
No disrespect.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I screwed up there when giving that stat. I think at one point in time, like Russell Wilson was performing better than Mahomes. That's clearly not the case. Like at this
Yeah,
point in
that
the
was like
season.
week 5-ish, I think, around in the season. It was like week 5 to 7. I think they were having pretty similar numbers, and then the yards kept on adding up. And Russell, I think Patrick, because when you look at the touchdowns, interception ratio, and completion percentages, that was one part of the story. But then when you see 1,000-yard difference, I feel like that shows drives stalling out versus drives going down the field, and maybe the running
Right.
backs, getting the scores instead of the quarterback throwing a touchdown. Because again,
Yeah, they have similar like touchdown numbers, like
mhm,
when you look at it, but like the Chiefs have been a
mhm,
lot more like high scoring affairs than the Broncos
mhm,
have. So like there's some trade out there. You're right, and I when I look at some of Patrick Mahomes' interceptions, they're not like his fault at all. It's like if you go to the New England game, like Kadarius Toney like bobbles the ball like 2 times, and then it goes straight to the Patriots. It's been plays like that have happened, and then
mhm.
also like receivers like running the wrong
Yeah.
routes and things like
Mhm.
that. So fair point there. I think 45 sacks behind that offensive line is not good. Not good.
Yeah, because like their center has given up like one pressure all season, and like,
Wow.
and then also one last thing about like the whole Broncos offense issues that I have is so the leading receiver is Cortland Sutton, obviously. Number 2 is Jerry Jeudy. Number 3 is the running back room, and then it goes to the rest of the team. And so like because everybody's touted like this is Russell Wilson has had the highest completion percentage of his career this season, but he also has thrown the most checkdowns, screens, and dump offs he has in his entire career as well.
Broncos country, let's confide.
Let's ride. I still
Sorry,
do
I
like,
had to throw that one in there.
yeah, I still do like the phrase "Let's ride." I think it's kind of fun to say.
Yeah.
I'll thank Russell Wilson for that because regardless of what happens, I can either say it and be like "Let's go," or I can just say it as a joke. But it's a fun thing to say, at least to me.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine all the jubilation you had when they beat the Chiefs, and
That
there's
was
no
so
way
fun.
this could have possibly gone wrong. You guys saw how many times he said, "Let's ride," and then
Yeah.
now they have to deal with a situation like this.
Yeah. Well, Broncos still have a chance to have their first winning season since like 2016, so I'll take it.
Yeah, Broncos country, let's ride.
Let's ride with Jarrett Stidham.
Yep. um, yeah, going from one confounding situation to another one that was like absolutely atrocious. I think like
hmm
this is why we need full-time refs in the NFL.
hmm
Okay? Like so okay, I'll get the context of this. Lions were driving down the field. They were absolutely picking apart the Cowboys' zone defense.
hmm
Like like it seemed like the Cowboys couldn't touch like Jared Goff like at all. Like Panay Sewell was holding Micah Parsons all on his own, and it was really impressive to watch. Like Amon Ra got open, Laporta, like Jameson, like anybody and everybody. Like so to drive down, they score a touchdown, 21-20. Okay. 3 eligible offensive linemen, and yes, they were eligible, go up, line up for the Lions, like 2 tackles, I think, to the right, one to the left. And on the 2 point conversion, because Dan Campbell wants to win the game, he doesn't want to settle for a tie because the Lions just picked apart the Cowboys defense like
hmm
butter. I don't blame him for making that decision. Like if you see that all transpire, you're thinking in your mind, they can't stop us. Let's end this right now. They run the trick play. They get it. They get it to Taylor Decker, I believe, who catches the ball, and they win the game. 20 seconds later, the refs blow the play dead, like like after the play was over. Um, throw the flag and say ineligible man downfield penalty. The Cowboys, the Cowboys jump off sides, so the Lions move back to the two. They can't convert, and the Cowboys win. Game over.
Mm-hmm.
The entire issue with this is that Taylor Decker apparently didn't report that he was an eligible receiver,
Mm-hmm.
but Dan Campbell disputed that. Taylor Decker disputed that. Jared Goff disputed that. At risk of being fined, mind you.
Yeah.
And the actual issue was the ref heard that one person reported eligible, but he didn't stop to wait for the other two linemen to report that they were eligible.
Mm-hmm.
So like he got confused by the situation, even though Dan Campbell told the refs that the play was coming before the game because like coaches do that. I
Mm-hmm.
found this out like on the Pat McAfee show, like when Aaron Rodgers
Mm-hmm.
explained this. Like any trick play that the coaches are gonna run, they tell the refs, like, here's how we're gonna line up so it doesn't like break any rules. This is the play, and expect us to run it in this game at some point.
Mm-hmm.
That's how most coaches do it, and that's something I
Yeah.
learned like listening to this.
Mm-hmm.
So that happened. Dan Campbell did that, and then they blow the call like that. So like with that context I just added, that was a complete gaff on the ref, and
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to get your thoughts on like how much does this ending impact you like as a football fan?
Yeah. Well, if you look at the pre-snap clip, you literally see Taylor Decker talking to the ref. And I'm like, what could he possibly be talking about other than, hey,
I'm an
I'm
eligible
reporting is
receiver.
eligible? Like, what could he possibly be talking? Is he just saying, hey, ref, how's the wife and kids? Like, like what else could he be talking about, you know? And so I think it's so dumb. And obviously the NFL agrees with the sentiment that the refs messed up on their job because he barred the team from refing any playoff game this season. So like the NFL knows that the refs messed up here. Literally everybody knows, but and like it's just such an awful call. It's an awful, I think, image kind of PR thing for the NFL as well in terms
It's
of
not the
because
first time by this ref crew though. It's not the first time because
Mhm.
if
Oh yeah,
if
because
you
they
look
had
at the
the
Chiefs and
Chiefs
Packers
game.
game,
Yeah.
yeah, the Chiefs and Packers game, like the Chiefs should have like they were in scoring position. Like had that call been made, and they didn't do it. Clear pass interference.
Mhm.
Justin Fields and the Bears driving at halftime against the Browns. I think it was that same crew. Zadarius Smith, like well after the play, like decks Justin Fields, like when
Mhm.
that Justin Fields had let the ball go like a second and a half, like after that.
Mhm.
So well after the play, completely decks
Mhm.
him. No call. Bears miss out on the field goal. That impacted the score at that game. And numerous other situations I can't recall off the top of my head right
Yeah,
now.
there was the Eagles game that his crew refed too. The Eagles got zero holding calls, and as I was watching the clip, they were just like showing plays where blatant holding was happening that affected the play, and like
What game is this?
it was one of the Eagles games earlier in the season.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so it's
Yeah,
that crew, but like it affects and like for some of these, I mean, not even the Chiefs one, but like for some of the other games, it's like I'm kind of okay with if he calls if it happens first half or maybe even like the first portion of the third quarter. But once it hits the fourth quarter, these kind of like game breaking calls really just ruin the game. I think I
yeah.
mentioned this on a previous episode too, where uh, when a penalty of like this caliber takes place late in the fourth quarter, it turns into who does the refs want to win rather than let the players play it out and let best man win.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I don't know, because like again, I go back to the last Super Bowl, the Eagles and the Chiefs were the game came down to one single, holding call on the Eagles at the very end of the game when the Eagles literally can't do anything about it after like the fact. And again, if it's a blatant one, like the Chiefs one that happened against the Packers earlier in the season, you can call that one. But then like the subtle ones that don't get called again, it comes back to inconsistent officiating, which I think you said that is the reason why we should have that thing of full time referees because obviously a situation like this happened, and it affects more than just the players because you have to think about how think about the thousands of people that are betting money on this game that goes into millions and millions of dollars as well. I
Right.
didn't bet on the game, but then
No,
imagine
forget that. Like just TV watchers, like
mhm,
also like a lot of like decision makers, like the GM, coaches, players, obviously, like all the financing that goes into this, that's at risk when like
mhm,
a call out of their control gets made. Um, and on that same note, I'm glad you brought it up. There needs to be like a program or like some sort of system to get like full time reps. Like I've heard
mhm,
players like say many times, like Gene Serator was
mhm,
one of like the best refs they've ever had because they understood the situation. And if you go to college football, like those refs are like refs full time
mhm,
ref in that game. That Alabama Michigan game was probably one of the best like called games by refs I've seen in a while. Like
mhm,
that was a game I was excited to watch, loved watching, and then like you could tell it was like purely determined by the players. Like and for this like program, like ideally like refs would get trained, they would learn how to make calls. They would go through situations like fourth quarter, overtime, going through like call procedures and like if you want to call it like pass interference looks different for like different refs.
mhm.
Like when they make
Yeah.
the call pass interference, it's subjective, right? There's objective rules in place on like what is pass interference, what is not. But clearly this season, a lot of it has been subjective. Like particularly when like quarterbacks purposely underthrow the ball, like
Mhm,
to drive that pass interference call, it's subjective because the refs like don't see that intent and they call it because technically the cornerback is interfering with the receiver. So that's a little hack for QBs to go through. But
mhm,
like they would get trained on those situations, recognize like when the cornerback is intentionally impeding the receiver versus like when he's not.
mhm,
Understand the situation in the fourth quarter and overtime. Um, like how do we call the game in the first half? Keep it consistent with the second half. Like so it isn't like a one-off case like we saw in the Lions in the Cowboys game. And like
mhm,
the thing that really irks me is that the Patriots have been doing this like when Tom Brady was QB, they've been doing this ineligible receiver downfield like formations all the time. All the time. They always have like a swing tackle on like one end of the line that ends up being a receiver. Like I've seen like there's one that happened against like the Ravens during a divisional playoff game. They've done it multiple times like in the season. Like I'm not talking about the throwback pass. I'm literally talking about an a lineman like looking like a tight end, but he's actually an eligible receiver. But like teams are thinking, oh, he can't possibly like, be a receiver on this play and things like that. So like the Lions aren't the first team to run this
mhm,
like idea of like ineligible receivers, but like to have a call saying like, oh, that's not like he's illegally downfield when it's not the case is just like blatantly wrong. I think
mhm.
because like
Yeah.
at that stage of the game, and then like the fact that the refs didn't take the time to listen to the players, follow the game plan that the coaches put out and the rules. Like that's what's really irking. It's like that's why
Mhm,
I'm like calling for more training right now, calling for a program,
mhm,
like calling for full time reps because if you have full time reps, like where it's their sole job to dictate like what gets called and what not gets
mhm,
called, you don't see things like this happen.
mhm. Yeah. And lucky for the Lions, they already have a playoff spot, but
But this was
like
like
I
this is a
think it'd
home
be
playoff game on the line. Like they could be the two.
I know.
They have an outside shot to be the one seed, or like they
Mhm,
realistically probably could have caught the two seed had this
mhm.
play like gone as called legally and properly.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, they probably would have been the 2 seed, but yeah, it is disappointing. But I think it would have been even more heartbreaking if, the Lions were in the playoff race and were the cusp of trying to get a playoff spot, like a wild card spot, and then a play like this
Oh,
were to happen.
100%, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm just as much as it sucks, I am grateful that the Lions already have secured their spot in the playoffs
Mm.
because, like, I don't know, I could only imagine if this sort of happened to like the Buccaneers or something, where they're technically in the hunt. They don't have their official spot, or like the Seahawks or something.
Or any of the AFC South teams. Yeah, I feel you.
Mhm,
Yeah, that's
mhm.
a fair point from that sense. But like I think the reason why they were downgraded is like you don't want to see this happen in the playoffs. Like if a playoff game gets determined by
Sure.
this, oh that like we might have to stop watching NFL, dude.
Honestly.
Yeah, So there's that. Rant's over. Let's talk about another thing that really irks me. Are the Packers a dangerous wild card?
um, I think they can be. I still, I think they aren't a deep playoff threat quite yet. I think it comes down to lack of playoff experience with the team, at least the offensive side of the team. um, but I do think that like they could theoretically pull off a win in the playoffs, but um, I just think consistent good teams that they'd be having to face in the playoffs makes it tricky. But they have been on a tear as of late with Jordan Love. He surpassed the Bears' single season passing yard record and the touchdown record, I believe. Uh, maybe the Bears get past their own next season with Justin Fields. Maybe he has a better season. Maybe they draft a good guy in the draft, get someone good in the draft or something that can push them to the next level. But so far, Jordan Love still has their number, I guess.
Um, Bears, you better knock them out. Please, please, please knock out Jordan Love and the Packers, man. I'm tired of this guy. I'm tired of this guy slandering the Bears, hyping up Jordan Love like he's the next coming of Brett Favre. He's not. It's like, please, just end this misery. Like, beat the Packers, and then we don't have to talk about them. Um, but realistically, I think they are. I really think they are because they have a really good defense. I think they found them, and that's hard to fathom. Like after like 2 weeks before they played against the Vikings, like because Bryce Young had a career day against them. Like I think Taylor Heineke had a career. Uh, who was the quarterback? Jake Browning had a career day against them. Like basically inexperienced quarterbacks were like performing like top 10 QBs against the Packers. And they clearly have solved that against the Vikings. Jordan Love's processing against the Vikings the second time he's faced them was really, really impressive. Like he seemed to know where to go with the ball. He was confident in doing so. Um, and those two things definitely stand out. And the fact that Aaron Jones is back, Christian Watson will be back. Jaden Reed, one of my favorite draft day players, looks really, really nifty, effective, and has the makings of a future number one receiver. I don't know if Musgrave's going to be. I don't know the timeline of Musgrave because he was on IR.
But Kraft, right? Kraft.
Crafts look pretty good. He's pretty
looked good
decent.
for what it has been, and plus, and Witz has played pretty good throughout the season too. When they've had to call his number.
Yeah. Fun fact: I think Tucker Kraft is from this like small city in South Dakota that like has no streets at all. I think there's a total of like 165 people there. Like they absolutely revere him, and then the field that of the school he went to, I think the field's name was like Doug Kraft Field, and I like his father's name, and that was like a really intriguing story that I saw on Sunday night.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, like that's crazy. Like think he has a whole fan base in like South Dakota that are Green Bay fans right now. But like I think the way like this team is like young and has a chance to grow and develop and get better over the season, it's like really been like a smart strategy by the Packers. And the way like Jordan Love has looked now compared to like week 4 and beyond has been particularly impressive. Because like remember he started out really hot, much to my dismay, the first 3 weeks, and he had this little lull period of inconsistencies, and now like now he's starting to turn it on. Um, I think you told me his touchdown to interception ratio off air was like 16-1 over the past 7 games or something like that.
Yeah, 7 games. Yeah, it's 16-1 touchdown interception ratio.
That's ridiculous. Like that, like if that's not finding yourself as a quarterback,
Hmm.
I don't know what is. And like
Yeah.
Matt LaFleur schemed up some nice plays.
Hmm.
So like
Yeah.
things have been looking good for the Packers
Hmm.
of late, and I could see them knock out the Lions
Hmm.
because they're a divisional rival. That could be
Hmm.
possible. Um, what's more likely going to happen is they're going to be end up facing the Cowboys,
Hmm.
facing their old head coach, and that would be an intriguing matchup to see how they would line up because that's like the type of game like Dallas could lose. Like
Hmm.
they could lose that type of because it's notorious Dallas. They haven't lost at home this season. They should have lost at home, but they haven't lost at home, and they looked absolutely dominant being at home. But like with that said,
Hmm.
if there was ever a time to cowboy, it would be to like Mike McCarthy's old team with like a
Hmm.
bunch of young upstarts because the Cowboys are flaunting around thinking they're overconfident. So that's one
Yeah.
matchup there. And then like you had the 49ers who looked like the most dominant team in the NFL until they went against the Ravens
Hmm.
and run the same exact offense that like LaFleur has run in the Kyle Shanahan
Hmm.
offense. So like the Packers could keep themselves in it
Hmm.
like until the divisional round. It's completely possible. I don't think their ceiling is like championship or Super Bowl. Like
Hmm.
that'd be crazy. Even with everything that's gone on with the Eagles
Yeah.
and the 49ers. But like I could see them win the wild card. That's completely possible.
Hmm. Yeah. But this season with the Packers is also, in the weirdest way, had me put a question mark on Aaron Rodgers because more or less this Packers team is the same as it was last season. But the Packers seem to have struggled quite a bit last season. And you also have to think Aaron Jones has missed most of the year this year with just on and off injuries as well, with leading uh, AJ Dillon, who's been kind of on and off too in terms of his production, with just a pool of a lot of young receivers, rookie tight ends, also them getting injured a little bit too. So this kind of made me more curious to see how well can he play and elevate the Jets. I mean, Jets quarterback was definitely bottom of the barrel. I think they improved, but how much can Aaron Rodgers, especially at his age, carry the Jets is kind of something that I was thinking about as we're talking about this.
I don't think that's the case, and here's why.
Hmm.
I don't think the Packers had the receivers that they did like when Aaron Rodgers was there.
Hmm.
And because like Romeo Dobbs and Christian Watson were just getting settled. Like Christian
Hmm.
Watson didn't like start producing until like the second half of that season.
Hmm.
Um, and Romeo Dobbs, like he was like everybody's like trading camp like favorite, like going into that season. And he had some struggles with drops that season. That
Hmm.
to his credit, he's like cleaned up, but then he also had a bad drop against the Vikings. So
Hmm.
it's like he's cleaned up like 50% of like his drop patterns, but still needs work there. So like
Hmm.
Aaron Rodgers had to deal with that,
Hmm.
and his receiving talent wasn't as good.
Yeah.
With Jordan Love's, like Christian Watson's 1 year better, Romeo Dobbs is 1 year better. Jaden
Hmm.
Reed, I think, is a huge, huge difference maker
That
on
is
that
true.
team
Yeah.
because he opens so much for them. Like even when he doesn't get the ball, like just his speed and explosiveness like creates for others, and they don't have like the young and athletic tight ends that the Packers have. Like Robert Tunyon is not what Tucker Kraft and
Hmm.
Luke Musgrave offered, like as far as like upside athleticism. Like
Hmm.
he's a functional tight end that Aaron Rodgers relied on a lot in the red zone. But like between the numbers, he probably is not the same player as like those two or what
Hmm.
those tight ends had the potential of doing.
Hmm.
So I look at that and then I look at like the improvement of Zach Tom on the offensive line, solidifying
Hmm.
that offensive line. And I think the Packers have done a lot to invest in Jordan Love,
Hmm.
whereas they refused to do so with Aaron Rodgers. So that would
Hmm.
probably be my only pushback on that. But
Okay.
you do you do have some credit where it's due because Aaron Rodgers come back from Achilles injury, and
Yeah,
the
it's that
Jets,
plus age.
yeah, age, and then the Jets situation wasn't as like tenable as people thought.
Hmm.
Like as good as Brees Hall is, he's phenomenal. I think he
Hmm.
has top five upside if Aaron Rodgers is there. And Garrett
Hmm.
Wilson, I think the same thing of him at the
Hmm.
receiver position. As good as they are, they didn't have enough answers like elsewhere.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I think that changes next season too, with the Jets. But that would probably be my pushback reasons on Aaron
Hmm.
Rodgers like suddenly like going
Hmm.
down a cliff.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because I mean, like again in the beginning, I said that he'll probably do better than whatever the Jets throughout the season in terms of some of their
Oh,
quarterback.
that's a given. I'm fully confident in that.
And they still won a handful of games too. So like, I wouldn't be surprised to see them. It probably won't be division contender, like leading the division type team, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them like pretty heavily invested in the playoff race late into the season. But I'm just kind of interested to see how much he can carry the team when the team needs to be carried. Because I think Garrett Wilson is, in my opinion, easily better than any receiver the Packers have right now. Brees Hall is more dynamic than current Aaron Jones plus AJ Dillon in terms of, I mean, Aaron Jones got hurt, so I'm just saying in the 1-to-1
No, but I
ratio
mean
there.
like you're 100% right. Aaron Jones is probably like a sexier name that people well no because Brees Hall is newer, but like Aaron Jones and Brees Hall like have similar running styles,
Hmm.
but Brees Hall can break an 80-yard game open on like any play, and like Aaron Jones can't do that with the same exact like like Brees Hall is better long speed
Hmm.
off a torn ACL than Aaron Jones does.
Yeah. Well, Aaron Jones,
So,
like 4 years ago, maybe I could see that happening, but we're not
no,
4 years ago, Aaron Jones. So, yeah,
yeah.
I think that. But then I look at,
No, nothing. Take nothing away from Aaron Jones. I'm just like it's just
Mhm.
purely like how
Yeah.
good Brees Hall is.
Yeah, and then yes, but then after those two, I think the tight end situation's okay. But then after, and then I think the rest of the talent is pretty has a lot of question marks. So I think if the Packers do want to, I kind of almost a segue into the next topic, which is college football playoffs and just kind of the draft and whatnot. But I kind of wonder what offensive pieces they bring in to help complement the two main, star pieces of Garrett Wilson and Brees Hall, because I still think that they need one more, at least average piece on the team to truly become like safe contenders in the playoff race
Yeah,
next season.
that's yeah. Fair points there. Um, last bit of set of news. Um, I really enjoyed watching the college football playoffs.
Mhm.
Like I caught a little bit of like the Alabama Michigan game towards the end and then overtime. Really enjoyed that game. I thought it was officiated great. Lake Corum is like a superstar. JJ McCarthy,
Mhm.
absolute like the way Michigan came back, excellent. Alabama played a good game. Um,
Mhm.
I think college football got these top four teams right, and that's me saying I thought Florida State should have been in at four,
Mhm.
even though the quarterback situation was like clearly not the same once Jordan Travis went down. Um,
Mhm.
but I think these two matchups are really, really good for the
Mhm.
playoffs. Like all these four teams deserve to be in. I think
Mhm.
it's more of a reflection of like we need that 12-team playoff next year as soon as possible to really showcase how many good teams there are in college football now. It's not just like
Mhm.
Alabama and Georgia anymore. So
Mhm.
I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed the Texas and Washington game actually.
Mhm.
Washington had that in control, and then they got struck on with an unlucky injury bug like under 2 minutes when they were trying to put the
Mhm.
game away. That gave Texas a chance, and Texas almost won it. But like Washington's played really great defensively of late once they got all their players back. So
Mhm.
I absolutely enjoyed it, and even though like Georgia and like Florida State aren't in, I think there's tons of players from both those programs that are going to impact the draft a ton.
Mhm.
So, um, just wanted to get your thoughts on how do you think these football playoffs like impact the NFL draft as we start or dive there.
Yeah, I think quarterback stock was very high regardless, but I think this has boosted a ton of quarterbacks' values going into this draft. Um, I don't know. I feel like, there's obviously always question marks about quarterbacks. You don't really know who's going to be the good ones, who's going to not be as good. But all these guys that we've seen really kind of, at least the ones that are entering the draft, we've seen, make remarkable plays, win or lose. And I think I saw like a stat as well of like how there's just a lot of cool young talent coming into the draft, plus cool young talent that just entered into the NFL. And so I think there's a lot of excitement to be had for the NFL. But yeah, I do think um, teams on the cusp end of quarterbacks may have an opportunity to draft a young quarterback, even if they are later in the draft, just with how many quarterbacks there are available uh, currently in just in this upcoming draft.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the Commanders would. Like Sam Howell's looked like he's had his like really highs and really lows this season,
Mm-hmm.
but they're a team that could do it. Patriots could do it. I
Mm-hmm.
think Cardinals are writing it out with Kyler.
Yeah, it
Um,
seems like
so
that.
I don't think so. Giants. Um,
Potentially, they just signed Daniel Jones, so I wouldn't be surprised if they try to give him some like a year
if
more.
I'm them, I'd be gunning for Jaden Daniels. I
Yeah.
I think regardless of like the Daniel Jones contract, I
Mm-hmm.
think the way that Tommy DeVito has played, like
Mm-hmm.
I think it's shown a lot on like how Brian Dable's system really is. Like when you go
Mm-hmm.
from Daniel Jones to Tommy DeVito, and like you
Mm-hmm.
get a spark from Tommy DeVito, and like Tyrod Taylor's been like pretty decent. Like
Mm-hmm.
he doesn't have like the throwing upside, but like he could still sling the ball like in like certain spots of like the like he can't create as well on his own, which is why he's not Lamar Jackson or Justin Fields. But like he can still run a
Mm-hmm.
functional offense. And I think like if you get somebody with the upside of a Daniels or like a Penix,
Mm-hmm.
like at 5, that's a lot better than like riding it out with Daniel Jones.
Yeah.
So
They could
like
also go for one of the top receiver prospects at that number 5 spot too.
yeah, and then you have the Falcons at 10. So like those are like 5 teams right there, or maybe
Yeah.
yeah, like 5 or 6 teams that are there right now that could take quarterbacks. So
Mm-hmm.
like you could end up seeing 6 or 5 or 6 quarterbacks in the top 10 picked,
Mm-hmm.
which is
Yeah.
absolutely unheard of. I thought like the draft class with like Trey Lance, Zach Wilson, like
Mm-hmm.
Justin Fields, like Trevor Lawrence and Mac Jones. I thought that was going to be
Mm-hmm.
really, really good because Trey Lance was one of my favorite QBs. I thought he had the highest
Mm-hmm.
upside. Trevor Lawrence is really good. I thought Justin Fields would be picked a lot higher than he was. Grateful for him to
Mm-hmm.
go into Chicago. And then Mac Jones had like the best rookie season out of all these guys. So
Mm-hmm.
like this draft class can easily top that. Like with the way we've seen like a majority
Mm-hmm.
of those quarterbacks pan out so far, like in particular Lance,
Mm-hmm.
Jones, and Wilson, and then like what the
Yeah.
2024 class like has to offer. I don't see any of those guys like busting. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
Knicks, but like the thing is, Knicks and Penix have had a lot of experience. Like
Mm-hmm.
most of these guys
Yeah.
coming into the league are the same age as like Justin Fields or like Trevor Lawrence or like
Mm-hmm.
1 year younger, which is crazy to
Yeah.
say that.
Yeah. And I feel like people like knock like the age of some of those guys like being like 23 or 24 years old, but I think that like in the situation that you do hit on your guy with one of these guys, like you could have this dude for another decade or decade and a half maybe of quality football. And so I feel like people are super high on getting, the guy that's 21, 20 or 20, 21 years old. And it leaves, I think, older players that are really talented to go later in the draft. And that's where we see a lot of, late round like success stories of player who's like, oh, he's a bit older, so we decided not to draft him. He goes in the 5th round, he breaks out, and he's like, wow, like where did he come from? And you look at his college tape, and he was literally a superstar in college, but he was just older.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I see where that happened, but it's kind of silly.
It's a classic Tom Brady story. Like
Hmm.
Tom Brady had to compete with like 7 to 8 other quarterbacks just to get on the field and be named the starter. And then the 1 year he was like claimed to be the full time starter, they got this guy Drew Hansen that to compete with him half the season.
Hmm.
And only through that, like Tom Brady was able to show like he was a clear cut. And then he got drafted in the 6th round.
Hmm.
Like, and I think that career panned out pretty nice. So like
Hmm.
with older guys, they tend to have more experience. They have more time to process what the defense is actually showing them. And you see a lot of things on tape that are sustainable in the NFL. Just like a
Hmm.
Tyson Bagent, Division II quarterback, played all 4 years, even though it was Division II. Like he has the experience to like go up to the line of scrimmage, call plays, run huddles, run motions. Like he has the experience like handling all of that. And like
Hmm.
a guy like Penix, I would not downgrade just because of his age
Hmm.
and the potential years it can add. Because a football player's life is very short, like as far as like
Hmm.
career. So you should be like if your team's like gunning for like quarterback play and upgrades, you should be looking for a guy that can upgrade your team for 5 to 7 years. Because that gives you a
Hmm.
realistic shot to build around him for like 2 years and compete for the rest of it. It gives you like a 4 to 5 year window. Then you could probably reasonably evaluate if this guy like the guy for me. And that doesn't mean like don't draft any guy like 5 to 7 years
Hmm.
from now. Like it means like you should be drafting 1 or 2 guys like AKA or Jordan Love and have him sit behind multiple years or 1 year to develop those like pro style skills to plug them in.
Hmm.
Like that's probably like what the Lions are doing with Herndon Hooker, I think. And then what
Hendon
happened with
Hooker.
Jordan Love? What happened with Aaron Rodgers? What happened with Mahomes? Like it doesn't hurt to have that guy like sitting back for like a full season, like knock on wood for injury, like to the starter. But it doesn't hurt to have that guy just sit back and really understand the offensive system he's running. Like if you look at all those programs, like the Chiefs, like what the Lions have building, or like what the Packers have building, it's all like sustainable programs that they had on offense for years. So like that's like an excellent situation to build on. And then like other programs like what the Bills and the Ravens have going on, they've been like leaning in on Josh Allen and like Lamar Jackson's strengths and
Hmm.
really building around what they could do well and getting the players to sustain that. So basically I'm saying this all to say like you should have the right situation when you draft Penix and not just draft the youngest guy that's there with the most upside.
Hmm.
Because we've seen what that looks like with Drew Lock, Zach Wilson so far,
Hmm.
and you name it. Like it doesn't work. And I while I think like this class is more talented and has less technical gaps as like Drew Lock and Zach Wilson had coming out,
Hmm.
um, you need to have the right situation too. That
Yeah.
matters as well. All right. Anything else to add on like the draft? I guess the one thing
Uh,
for me is Blake Corum is a stud. He should go in the
oh
first
yeah.
round. He looks like Christian McCaffrey part 2.
Yeah. Well, because I thought there's talks about him coming out last year for last year's draft and how he was already one of the top running back prospects last season, and the fact that he comes back, dominates again, uh, just reinforces the fact that he is a talented running back, um, and whatever team gets is going to get. I hope he's a stud, but yeah, it gets a stud.
Yeah, I mean, and then obviously Bowers should be picked top 10. Um,
Oh
I
yeah, for
think
sure.
I would like the Bears to pick him, but like I think they're
Hmm.
too low now that they've gone on the winning streak. So like realistically, I could see the Cardinals take him to pair him with
Hmm.
Trey McBride and form a a
Hmm.
nasty duo tight end. I'm so happy for Trey McBride. He
Yeah.
looks like a super stud. But
Hmm.
like more realistically, I think the Chargers might draft him. And then
Yeah.
a lot of weapons I'm really excited about coming out. Marvin Harrison for sure. I talked about Malik Neighbors. I think I really like him. And Roma Dunze, love him. And
Hmm.
those are just a few like that come to mind. There's obviously a lot of great receivers like
Hmm.
coming out, but if the Bears could get two of those three, like with their top 10 picks, like if Bowers falls, like I would take Bowers, but
Hmm.
get Marvin with the first pick, unless you get like a Carolina situation, the trade,
Hmm.
and you could still pick Marvin at a later pick. I doubt
Hmm.
it though because the Cardinals are right there. But get Marvin with the first pick, get either Odunze or Neighbors at 10,
Hmm.
and suddenly you're talking about the Bears offense. That's my dream. That's my hope. Um, but we'll see if it pans out.
Hmm.
Alrighty. If you got nothing to add, that's it for our show. Thank you guys for watching. Welcome to 2024. You can follow us on our Instagram at amon.a.mission. So you can see more of Corsian's fist bumps. We're gonna add a lot more contact going into this year. Um, if you haven't yet, subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment. Um, Send your condolences to Corsian and I because I'm not looking forward to the Packers game. He's not looking forward to see how this Broncos situation is resolved. But
As long as you get a
we
quarterback.
really need it. So we're going through it. We're going through it as fans. But take care, you guys, and we'll see you next week.
Yep. Peace out.